Welcome. Welcome to everyone who has come out today. The purpose of this talk is to provide you with a tasty hors d'oeuvre before the main meal. We have two wonderful keynote sessions coming up shortly. I thank our speakers for traveling to join us and the RIXARCH team for organizing this event. We are looking for a place to live in, a place of habitation, a place we can call home, not just a house. A house is not a home. A house is not just a house. We arrive at understanding that a home is more than a building, it is a place to live in. Housing is more than buildings. It is the foundation of how we live, connect and belong. Since Adam and Eve's expulsion from the garden, we have sought shelter and a return to it. Our idea of habitation remains tied to these origins. Fujimoto Sol offers a poetic formulation that brings together architecture and landscape. This was inspired by one of our students who recently mentioned this quote. Architecture is a garden with a roof. A garden is architecture without a roof. This collapses the boundary between built form, urban space, and nature, suggesting continuity rather than separation. So today I will look at 6 points. I have limited time, so roughly 5 minutes, 4 minutes for each one of these points, so I'll have to move quite quickly, but we'll look at the city beyond construction. House is not just a house. Imagined urban interventions. Soft city and lived urbanism, imaginable city versus imaginary city, and imagination as an urban practice. Live in asks us, how do we live in cities today, and how might we live better tomorrow? The hyphen mark shifts from static housing towards inhabitation as a process shaped by infrastructures, economies, technologies, and cultures, as Walter's just mentioned. We frame live-in through two lenses. Some of you may have already read this, but some of you may have not, but I just want to stress it again. Live, life, livability, living infrastructure, living innovations, cities as metabolic systems shaped by flows of energy, materials, climate, and social vitality. In place, in habitation, in common, in between, inclusive, intergenerational, interoperable, intelligent. Dwelling as a relational and situated, formed between individuals, communities, and environments. Now this image, this Pruitt-Igoe image, which represents a building complex from 1954 to 1972, that came down. It has various myths about it, why it did come down. Well, it's not purely just architectural reasons, but it's for these other reasons as well, political, economic, and social, why this building came down. And today's conference theme is to look at how architecture and these aspects work together so that we don't have to take buildings like that down in the future. So, I want to just give a brief summary of our previous conferences. Each year, the RIXARCH conference has explored themes that lead into one. In 2023, we had the theme of Imagined Thing. Featuring John Haydick and the Riga project, we examined architecture as writing upon the city, the relationship between subject and object. And for Haydick, architecture must move the spirit, otherwise it's merely a building. In 2024, we looked at Blind Spot, featuring Asta Zaringa, architect and pedagogue. Her work describes a city as a continuum of overlapping spaces inhabited by citizens and shaped through social activity. And last year, the theme was Light Matters, featuring Gunnar Birkitz and Nordic Masters. Architecture does not contain light, it directs, reflects, and reveals it. Both form and void depend on light to sustain habitation. I participated in an exhibit about 6 years ago now, beginning of COVID in 2020. It was a pop-up exhibition series over a 6-month period. The project aimed to save and repurpose a 20th century modernist building here in Riga. This was organized by NRJA architects. The exhibit was titled Horizon. The horizon is an imaginary line, actually, separating the sky, land, and sea. It does not exist. A line that does not physically exist, yet structures our perception. The exhibition included paintings exploring the emotional impact of this imagery condition along with abstract cityscapes. One painting, Find Myself a City, I was inspired by the Talking Heads, the musical group. It explored how we respond to urban form and how imageable elements become legible within the city. Now, this word imageable will come up a few times during my talk. Another work, Urban Overtures, which is the title of my talk today, is that overture actually means introduction. So I'm giving you an introduction of today's themes, but also this particular work that I did examined the evolution of form as a convergence of flows and forces, objects emerging from the cityscape, from its fabric. Objects in the city are not autonomous. Built form arises from multiple conditions: geography, terrain, infrastructure, water, green space, social structures, and political and economic forces. The city is an integrated fabric, like a tapestry, hosting and sustaining these flows. I recently had the great opportunity to visit this exhibit in February, the Chicago Architecture Biennale. Questions of inhabitation have returned with urgency. The city as object and process, the role of the individual, scale, flexibility, and emotional engagement. This exhibit actually aligns with the Chicago Architecture Biennale Shift, Architecture in Times of Radical Change, curated by Florence Rodriguez. And the reason why I mention this is because this topic isn't just a topic about current here in Latvia or Europe, but it's an international topic. The biennial calls for rethinking architecture's role amid social, cultural, environmental, and spatial transformations. It positions architecture not only as a response, but as an agent shaping new ways of living, thinking, and building. This reinforces the relevance of our theme today, not only here in Latvia, but in Europe and globally. One of the exhibitors over the years that has participated at the Architecture Biennale, her name is Tatiana Bilbao, and she published this book. It's nearly 10 years ago, however, it's very, very relevant. House is not just a house. Tatiana Bilbao, in A House is Not Just a House, presents case studies from Mexico, where large-scale housing was built far from the city centers. Just imagine this. What happens when you build 20,000 homes for 60,000 people without infrastructure? Well, it actually happened. These communities lack access to jobs, services, transportation. For residents commuting, this becomes completely unaffordable to live in these neighborhoods and drive an hour to the city. Housing without infrastructure does not produce habitation. The car-centric Levittown model, exported globally. Those that don't know Levittown, I'll comment on that a little bit later. Explored globally also fails under these conditions. The pitched roof house became a recognizable archetype, but detached from context. The bigger question is how we start to design value into housing. While financial models and resale prices might be the indicator of value right now, we can imagine a better system in which value is actually determined by the quality of life in these homes. And here we have just some images of these 20,000 buildings in the middle of nowhere where people are expected to live and begin their lives with no infrastructure. Bilbao notes that these developments consist of identical houses differentiated only by bright colors. This creates an illusion of individuality, but does not actually solve any living problems. Houses in the middle of nowhere are not homes. In contrast, people accept small apartments in New York, even in poor buildings, because everything is there. Infrastructure, culture, music, work, opportunity. They're willing to pay the high rents. Consider London, a neighborhood, Angel, near Islington, one stop from King's Cross with access to the entire city and beyond. Angel is a dense and social diverse. Coffee shops, pubs, markets, cinemas, community spaces, all within walking distance. A small, expensive apartment becomes desirable because of its surroundings. In traditional Mexican construction, exposed rebar allowed for expansion. They would actually leave it coming out of the roofs. But residents began to reject this. The unfinished structure became a symbol of failure. People wanted houses that actually looked complete. Here I threw this image in, and one of the things that I'm integrating today is how also music responds to architecture as well as literature. And this is a quote by David Byrne from the Talking Heads, where we idolize, or we have our ideas about what an image may communicate to us. This is an image from while I lived in Cairo. Now let's contrast this with Cairo. Vast informal settlements built without planning, literally. Reinforced concrete frames repeated endlessly. They took the same building project, neighbor by neighbor, and they just used the same drawings to build the structure on the next plot. There was actually no master plan for this development. Buildings remain in a constant state of incompletion, exposed rebar, anticipating future expansion. I'm going to do a second floor when I have more money. This suggests flexibility, but also perpetual incompletion. In traditional Mexican construction, exposed rebar allowed expansion, but residents began to reject this. The unfinished structure became a symbol of failure. People wanted a house that actually looked complete. These are some of the neighborhoods with clay streets, garbage, goats, children, mess, all playing on the street as a public space. And here's an image just outside of the city. Obviously, the Nile irrigates a lot of these neighborhoods, which are green. Outside of that zone, everything is yellow. Now think about the meaning represented by these two contexts with respect to imageable, the image, the physical, versus the imaginative, its meaning. Okay, we have two completely different cultures here in these images. The double-pitched roof imported from the United States became desirable not for climate, but for an image of completion, and the archetype was appropriated to symbolize home, allegedly. We see several conditions: completed houses without infrastructure. I talked about briefly incomplete houses that function as homes, or expandable structures that remain visually unfinished. A home is not defined by image or structure alone. It emerges where infrastructure, form, and social life align. So the third part of my talk, imagined urban interventions. This is a summary of some research I've been doing, looking at 3 different media: architecture, music, and literature, and how they operate in the same epistemological field, yet each one is addressing how we can know something or understand something through different media. Architecture, literature, and music produce urban knowledge through imagination, not only construction. The city exceeds the physical form. It is continually shaped through perception, participation, and interpretation. Imagined interventions don't not alter the city physically, but transform how it is understood and inhabited. So now, considering Italo Calvino, a famous writer that described cities with words rather than with drawings, David Byrne that reacted with his band Talking Heads to cities through music, and of course John Haydick, who I've never mentioned before, talks about how architectural devices impact the city. Each engages the city through narrative, sound, or conceptual form. These are not metaphors, they are ways of completing the city, which is a very important point. So, welcome to Levittown. Those that don't know what Levittown is, it was one of America's first prototype suburbs. I will not get into detail of what it was because of time, but I will make some points in relation to that. So, mapping the parallels. Historical urban imagery. In Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, the city emerges through narrative memory and metaphor. It is never directly described. It is constructed through desire and imagination. The reader becomes a participant in producing urban meaning. The city is narrated, and the reader completes it through interpretation. And the real city is actually never fixed. It is continuously transformed through the act of reading, the participant. Historical urban imagery, or imaginary. In Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, the city emerges through narratives. And the point here I want to make is that the reader becomes a participant in producing urban meaning. The city is narrated and the reader completes it through imagination. By what he reads, he imagines in his mind what this looks like. The real city is never fixed. It is continuously transformed through the act of reading. Now, the next media, musical urban imaginary. Popular music operates as urban narration. In Cities by David Byrne of Talking Heads, the urban condition becomes rhythmic and repetitive. The city unfolds through sound, irony, and movement. The listener completes it effectively through memory and sensation. In the song Cities from the Fear of Music album, the cover of that album articulates urban anxiety, disillusionment, and the search for livability through music. Beneath its energy lies restlessness. Byrne cycles through real and imagined cities without actually ever arriving to the city of full desire. The song captures mobility, dissatisfaction, and the persistent search for belonging. In my youth, this was my favorite band from the 70s. In contrast, The Clash presents the city as conflict. Their work reflects the social political conditions of the 1970s Britain housing crisis. Sorry, Matt. Aggressive policing and class division. Buildings and neighborhoods are not neutral. They are products of policy. Such songs as London Calling, White Riot, Guns of Brixton, and Career Opportunities confront these realities directly. The city becomes a site of resistance, identity, and tension. As I listened to this music when I was in high school, I had a trip to South London to Brixton, and as I traveled to Brixton, I actually remembered the words of the song. It was so powerful that the neighborhood actually represented the protest just by going to it 30 years later. Joy Division extends this further. The work presents urban life as psychological, industrial, and alienating. The city becomes an emotional and existential condition. Music, in all these cases, operates as both interpretation and critique. It is an intervention that exposes urban pathologies, psychologically impactful. Now the third one, architectural imaginaries. John Haydick, who I've been researching and studying vastly for many years now. In John Haydick's work, architecture operates through narrative characters and objects. His interventions are conceptual rather than physical. Haydick introduces a troupe of autonomous figures into the city. These objects are not simple forms, they are agents. They alter perception and reframe context. And students and architecture faculties all over the world over the last 30 years have built, and these figures have popped up all over in different urban conditions. The viewer becomes a participant, completing the architecture through interpretation. Architecture here functions as cultural text upon the urban environment. It aligns with literature and music as parallel modes of understanding the city. Hayek's work resists purely functional and instrumental approaches. Instead, it demonstrates that architecture can operate through meaning, narrative, and imagination. This aligns with Calvino and Byrne. In each case, the city is not fixed. It is constructed through narrative, rhythm, and affect. The imagined interventions do not replace the city. They transform how it is perceived and inhabited. So some closing words on these three aspects. Across these disciplines, a shared structure emerges. An existing urban context is one, an imagined intervention. We had a workshop yesterday, and during that workshop, we might not realize that sitting at those tables, the groups were trying to imagine how to solve the problem, something that starts in your head before you even put it on paper. Hayek's characters, Calvino's narratives, and Talking Heads' urban soundscapes demonstrate a shared cultural practice. Imagination becomes a critical tool for understanding the city and giving it meaning. Architecture, literature, music each produce urban knowledge, not only through construction, but through imaginative engagement. Section 4. These ideas align with David Sim's Soft City, which emphasizes lived experience over rigid form. Cities are networks of flows, people, resources, relationships, and opportunities. Urban life is shaped through use, not only design. Actually, David Sim was here last year. He spoke at Riga Technical University, and his book, Soft City, is not only available in English, but the Latvian version now available. So I can strongly recommend this book to every architect or student that has not read it. Sims challenges the idea that cities must not be hard, hostile, or inhuman. Instead, he describes environments that are dense but livable, compact but adaptable, structured but flexible, socially rich rather than spatially accessible. And when I say compact but adaptable, that doesn't mean that we leave the rebar out on the roof to build the next floor. Talking about something else here. Both Sims and Byrne reject extremes of utopia and dystopia. They focus instead on pragmatic lived urbanism. The city is imperfect but functional, meaningful, and alive. We have to remember that the city is imperfect. The question is, how do we adapt and enjoy it? Number 5. I'm going to referencing here Kevin Lynch in a very important way. In the image of the city focuses on visual perception and spatial cognition. This is what we see, what we physically see around us. He defines the city through identity, structure, and meaning. The third component here being meaning. The first two are about the physical. The first two relate to the imageable, that which is we imagine or see physically with our eyes, the visible, legible aspects of the city. This talk shifts focus from seeing the city to also imagining it. Why? Well, the imageable and the imaginary, they are not opposites, and they are not this or that. They are both needed. They're complementary layers. Imageable, what is perceived, and imaginary, what is constructed culturally and emotionally. Henry Lefebvre expands this thought. 3 dimensions of space. We have perceived physical space, conceived planned space, which architects and planners do, and lived experience, those that live in those cities where the planners and the conceived have made their mistakes or made their successes. The imaginary aligns with lived space, symbolic, experiential, and shared. These black and white pictures that are in the background as I am reading these lecture to you are all from Levittown. There's good points and some bad points, and these quotes come from songs, different songs from the Talking Heads as they travel through different urban conditions. And here we have it. Once in a lifetime, for $8,490, you can have the perfect house for the two-child family. Literary imaginaries. Writers do not simply describe cities, they extend them. For example, James Joyce's Dublin becomes hyper-real through narratives. Charles Dickens' London becomes moral and atmospheric. Literature expands the city through time, memory, and interior space. Or one other example, Augustine, who wrote The City of God, talks about the world or the city of this age where we live, and the future which is promised with God. Musical imaginaries. Music produces non-visual forms of imaginability. It creates effective maps rather than spatial ones. It allows us to feel the city, its rhythm, tension, and mood. So, the third one, again, coming back to architectural imaginaries. These are some pictures from recent workshop where our students were actually building one of John Haydick's subject-object to be set up in this city as well, coming soon, we all hope. Architecture operates between the imaginable and the imaginary. Built form provides structure and legibility. At the same time, it carries meaning, memory, ideology, and aspiration. Think of Aldo Rossi, city as artifact of memory, or Rem Koolhaas's reading of the city through program, congestion, and flow. Architecture is both object and narrative. The imageable city provides structure, the imaginary completes it. Without imaginaries, the city is legible, physically, right, but empty. With them, it becomes meaningful, shared, and memorable. Cities are not only seen, they are completed in the imagination. A couple more shorts for you. Now the music, you can probably guess that this is music from Talking Heads albums where they sing about many different city conditions.
Bad boys, it all works out. You know I'm a little freaked out. I find a city, find myself a city to live in. Help me, find a city, find myself a city to live in. Pass away, things get a little spread out.
When it's lying on the floor, you can't even understand how tall it really is. This thing is massive. We're second-year architecture students and we actually built it. For 3 days, we worked in the wood with our professors, learning the craft, how to cut, join, fix mistakes, and keep going. It's an architectural installation by John Haydick, Object Subject. Shout out to the University of Arts, Philadelphia studio from 1987. And now we are bringing it out of the studio. Next up, the streets of Riga. Would your university teach like this?
Okay, so in conclusion, imagination as urban practice. Architecture, literature, and music generate urban knowledge through imaginative engagement. Imagination is not separate from practice, it is a critical tool. By comparing these disciplines, we recognize cultural production as a legitimate mode of urban thinking and evaluation. Imaginability enables perception, imaginaries complete meaning. Cities are not only built, they are narrated. And so, in this spirit, I conclude this urban overture for RIXARCH 2026 Live-In Conference. We invite you to engage with the themes of living, home, and habitation to be presented by our keynote speakers through architectural, social, environmental, and technological perspectives. Through these perspectives, the city is reimagined and completed through cultural production. Thank you very much.